Now it's the Friday fight night we've all been waiting for. Anthony Joshua versus Jake Paul in Miami. The former world heavyweight champion will take on the social media star this evening, streaming, of course, live on Netflix. Currently, Joshua is looking like the favourite as he seeks to revive his career. But analysts are not discounting a victory for Paul, who will want to prove himself in the ring. For more on this, I'm joined live now from Miami by boxing correspondent Gareth A. Davies. Gareth, brilliant to have you on the show. Right, it's finally here. One of the most anticipated fights of the year. Everyone has obviously had their say. Why has it been seen as so controversial?
Well, thank you for having me on. The gulf in class, experience, ability is self-evident. That Anthony Joshua, gilded with gold, Olympic super heavyweight champion in London in 2012, two-time heavyweight champion in the world. He's only really lost to a couple of the greats, Alexander Usyk, who's the #1 in the division. And he's up against a smaller, lighter guy who began on the Disney Channel and 5 years ago took up boxing, and has spoken into existence the fact that he wants to fight the very best in the world. So there's genuine worries and fears for the health and safety of Jake Paul going into this. But he talks about having a delusional optimism, does young Jake. And so he's really up against it, to be honest. And we need something of, perhaps I can say, biblical proportions. David beating Goliath again for him to get victory tonight.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I actually watched Anthony Joshua during the Olympics when he won that gold, and I remember it was absolutely incredible. But right now, you're lucky enough to be in Miami for the spectacle. These two stars, as you say, you know, from very different worlds with millions of fans. What is the atmosphere like at the moment as the build-up to the big fight continues?
Well, it takes place in the Miami Heat's stadium, the Kaseya Center today, the NBA team. I'm sitting here on Ocean Drive at the moment on South Beach. It's an amazing place, of course, and it's the perfect place for Jake Paul, who kind of has a domicile now in Puerto Rico, just across the water, to showcase I think for his 70-odd million subscribers online, that anything is possible. I think that's what this is about. And I think, as you say, I mean, it was an amazing occasion in London when Anthony Joshua signaled himself as a future star. He's the B-side on this. For example, he's the right-hand side on the poster as Anthony Joshua. He's played the game all week. And in the 5 weeks since this was announced, that this is the Jake Paul show. It's Disneyland for boxing, if you like. Jake Paul's beaten a couple of legends in the ring, and everyone says, oh, is it scripted? Is it meant to happen a certain way? Anthony Joshua has played along with him. They've had a lot of fun on the way. Jake Paul's tried to wind him up. Joshua said he's going to knock him out and beat him up tonight. I suspect that he will marinate him very slowly and take his time in there, but I do not see. I mean, I wrote today in the Telegraph that when Jake hits him with his biggest shot, it probably will be like a pebble hitting a tank, and that may be a reality and a wake-up call for Jake Paul when they step in, when the bell rings at about 10 p.m. Local time here in Miami.
I find that so fascinating because, you know, as we were talking about, AJ is a seasoned professional boxer. When he was boxing, Jake Paul was literally making YouTube videos. So I wonder how Anthony Joshua is going to play this. Is he going to let him stew? But I'll take your word for it because I'll see exactly what happens. But you just spoke to me. Both AJ and Paul have traded remarks, of course, back and forth in the run-up to this fight. I think AJ's actually been quite composed. Who do you think has the most to gain? And also, who has the most to lose? Because it's quite interesting. AJ hasn't really been on the forefront of boxing since the last loss.
Yeah, 15 months ago at Wembley Stadium, a catastrophic loss at the time against Daniel Dubois for the heavyweight title, one of the belts in the heavyweight division. I mean, he's got a massive, potentially massive fight with Tyson Fury, a book-ending, a book era, an era-ending fight with Tyson Fury. They've been on the same trajectory for 10 years. So if he loses, that really consigns that to dust. So there's a lot for There's a lot for Joshua to lose if the fight goes too long, if it goes 8 rounds, the full 8 3-minute rounds, because people are expecting him to deal with Jake Paul handily and just play it how he wants to play it. What's Jake Paul got to gain? I think he's won already. He's a huge star. Netflix, and that's the big picture here, have centered their kind of game, if you like, their live game. We binge on Netflix with series, don't we? This is their entry into live sports and live events. This is the 4th event they've done in 13 months, 3 of them involving Jake Paul, or certainly women's boxing as well. Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano garnered 6 million views. You know, when you think that he and Mike Tyson 13 months ago garnered 108 million views online, it shows you where these streaming giants are going. So that's the bigger picture. Where do they both gain? I think they get about $50 million each for this fight, because it will do massive numbers. And it just starts to make sports broadcasters look at what pay-per-view is as opposed to streaming. There's a bigger picture going on here as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I was one of those 108 million who watched Jake Paul fight Mike Tyson. But, you know, I just want to pick up on something you mentioned to me, because a lot of people have been talking about Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. Now, let's be honest, this is a fight we've all been wanting to see for so long. What's Tyson's camp saying? If AJ wins this, will Tyson Fury come out of retirement? What's the deal there?
Well, I think he's having a bit of FOMO at the moment, Tyson Fury. When Anthony Joshua 48 hours ago said, I mean, and I say this, I'm quoting him, that he would kill Jake Paul in the ring, and we were all very concerned about that phrase to begin with. And then he explained it a day later, that what he meant was, you're licensed to kill in there. And I think he was causing a bit of drama. Tyson Fury responded from his Land Rover with all his 7 kids inside back in the UK, saying, you know, you big dosser, as he calls people. What are you doing at 37 years of age? And a former heavyweight champion saying you're going to kill a YouTuber in the ring. So he's clearly waiting for his opportunity to sit next to Anthony Joshua on a press conference table and announce the big fight. We hear it is being talked about in the background. They'll both have warm-up fights in the spring next year. That's what we're hearing. And then they'll fight late summer, maybe with some financial backing from the great motivator and disruptor in boxing over the last 3 years, Turki Al-Sheikh, the Saudi Arabian minister. We hear he's involved as well, with Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren, the promoters of the respective fighters. But as you rightly say, we need to see that fight, certainly in sporting terms, next year, to close the era, as you say, because they've been very close to having fights several times, and for one reason and another it hasn't happened. I do hope we do get that fight this era. You know, I've covered boxing for 35 years, and it'll be a travesty to see it not happen.
You know what, I really hope that we get that fight too, because I would love to watch it and love to have you come on the show and talk to me about it. And I always think Tyson Fury, the Gypsy King, he's the best, isn't he, when he gives those big conferences and those weigh-ins. He always sings. He's the light and life sometimes of the boxing universe, isn't he, Gareth?
He is. He's very, look, he apes the time of Muhammad Ali, who was the first to use psychological warfare and wind his opponents up. And it's natural in some people. And I do think we've got a natural villain and a natural good guy if AJ, Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury do cross the T's and dot the I's and get that fight signed for next year. It'll probably be a 2-fight deal as well, I imagine, one in Riyadh and one at Wembley Stadium.
Well, tonight it's all about Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua, so we'll have to see how that goes. But Gareth A. Davies, I'm so jealous that you're in Miami right now, but I hope you have a great time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am.